bears witness to important moments in the history of our nation. And with today's ceremony, you are becoming part of that history. C'est un plaisir de vous accueillir ici pour cette cérémonie spéciale. Cette salle est souvent le témoin d'un moment
also
important dans
the
l'histoire de
scene
notre nation.
of very
Et
historic
avec la
moments,
cérémonie aujourd'hui, vous faites
such as
désormais
today's
partie de cette
ceremony.
histoire. The clerk of the Privy Council will now seek the Governor General's consent to proceed. Le greffier du Conseil privé
The
demandera
clerk of the
maintenant à la
Privy
gouverneure
Council
générale
will
la
now
permission de
seek
procéder.
the permission of the Governor General to proceed.
With the Governor General's approval, we will now proceed with the ceremony. Maintenant que le gouverneur général signifie
With
son
the Governor
approbation,
General's
nous
approval, we will
procéderons à
now
la cérémonie.
proceed with the ceremony.
The minister who's changing responsibilities will please come forward to swear the oath of office. Le ministre qui change la responsabilité est prié de s'avancer
The
pour
minister
prêter la
changing
serment
responsibilities will
d'office.
now please come forward to proceed with the oath of office.
The Honorable Dominic LeBlanc, Minister of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs. L'Honorable Dominic LeBlanc, Ministre des Finances et des Affaires
Dominic LeBlanc,
intergouvernementales.
Minister of Finance and
Moi,
Intergovernmental
Dominic
Affairs.
LeBlanc, je promets
I,
et jure
Dominic LeBlanc,
solennellement et
do
sincèrement
solemnly and
qu'au mieux
sincerely
de ma compétence
promise and
et de ma
declare
connaissance,
that I will
j'exécute
truly
loyalement
and
et
faithfully
fidèlement
and to
les
the best of my
pouvoirs
skill and
et je
knowledge
m'acquitterai des
execute the
responsabilités
powers
qui m'ont été
and the trusts
confiées
reposed
en
in me
qualité de ministre
as
des
Minister
Finances
of
et des
Finance
Affaires
and
intergouvernementales.
Intergovernmental Affairs.
I, Dominic LeBlanc, do solemnly and sincerely promise and swear that I will be truly and faithfully and to the best of my skill and knowledge execute the powers and trusts reposed in me as Minister of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs.
Congratulations, Minister.
Okay, a very strange scene, frankly. Clapping and hugs for a job that Dominic LeBlanc is tasked with doing because the government is in a crisis, a political crisis, after the resignation of Chrystia Freeland in a dramatic fashion this morning. Dominic LeBlanc, longtime friend, close friend of the Prime Minister's, close personal friend, and a man who has shown his competency in many areas, but also his political skills, which are, of course, will be tested here in this role and over the next 24 hours. But it was clear that this job needed to be filled and needed to be filled urgently, given the situation that this country is facing with Donald Trump, and the importance, of course, of the role of Finance Minister. So Dominic LeBlanc now becoming Finance Minister, Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, and Minister of Public Safety. And we are now at a point where multiple ministers have multiple files because people have been leaving, and a cabinet shuffle that was intended to happen this week was supposed to fix some of that. No longer clear whether there will be any cabinet shuffle of any kind beyond what we're seeing here today. But these are our first pictures of the Prime Minister since early this morning as this news was breaking.
Évidemment, je suis très
What do you want me to do, Tyler?
honoré de devenir ministre des Finances, de demeurer ministre des Affaires intergouvernementales. Je pense beaucoup à mes collègues à la sécurité publique. J'ai adoré
My colleagues
être
at
ministre de la
Public
Sécurité
Safety,
publique.
I absolutely loved being the Minister of Public Safety, and I was
J'ai,
very impressed by the men and women who work there. And of course, I intend to continue to support them.
It's an honor for me tonight to become Canada's Finance Minister and to remain as the Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs. I look forward to working with Canada's premiers as I have for the last number of years on some important challenges facing the country. I'm also thinking tonight of the remarkable women and men who work in the public safety portfolio, in the department and in the agencies. I've been inspired by their work over the last year and a half, and I look forward to hopefully continuing to support them in the work that they do for Canadians. And with that, I'm obviously thrilled and happy to take your questions.
Minister. Yeah. So we'll now go to questions. On passera maintenant aux questions. Comme d'habitude, une question est suivie. So as usual, one question, one follow-up.
Minister LeBlanc, David Baxter with the Canadian Press. If you can respond in French and English for broadcast friends.
We have several Liberal MPs calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. Jagmeet Singh also calling for the Prime Minister's resignation. How does the government manage to even push its agenda forward in a minority parliament?
The government passed a series of confidence votes last week. The spending estimates were approved. The government continues to focus on the work that Canadians want us to focus on. I had today interesting conversations with officials in the incoming administration in the United States on border security. My conversation with the Prime Minister today was entirely focused on the work that we want to do to support Canadians around affordability, obviously the threat of tariffs coming from an incoming administration and what we need to do to protect the Canadian economy. Alors moi, je suis tout à fait confiant.
So I'm very confident that we can continue to do the necessary work. And last week, our government received the support of the House of Commons on several confidence motions, and we are aware of the work ahead of us. Obviously, affordability issues are a priority for the government, and I, as Minister of Finance, will be certainly focused on that. We also have work to do with the U.S. administration. I remain Minister of Intergovernmental Affairs, and of course I intend to work with the premiers. They are essential allies for us in terms of the potential threat of a 25% tariff on our goods. So this is work I will continue to do.
Trying to work with the Americans going forward, seeing Chrystia Freeland, who stick-handled so much of it in the last Trump presidency, no longer being a part of cabinet, and we know Trump, he goes after weakness. Do you think he sees this as a weak moment in the Trudeau government?
I certainly don't propose to speak for President Trump or his administration. I was at the dinner at Mar-a-Lago 2.5 weeks ago and saw two leaders focused on a number of priorities, both in the Canada-U.S. Context, but talking about global issues as well. I've continued to have discussions with incoming Secretary Lutnick, for example, the Commerce Secretary, around border security, was involved in meetings with senior officials in the incoming administration today. So the one thing I think the American administration will respect is a government that's focused on our common priorities, on the shared issues around border security, economic prosperity. Those are the issues that I'll work on very happily with our American counterparts once they're sworn in.
Bonjour, Monsieur Leblanc. Estelle Côté-Strocade, Radio-Canada.
Hello, Mr. LeBlanc. Do you believe that Justin Trudeau must resign? And if not, do you think he still has the legitimacy to remain Prime Minister, given all we've heard in recent hours? Well, I believe that the Prime Minister remains very focused on the work that we have ahead of us. In my conversations with him today, we talked about the cost of living, public finances, and the work that we have to carry out with the Trump administration starting in January. And I believe that Canadians expect that we will remain focused on those issues. That is the work that I look forward to doing as Minister of Finance and Intergovernmental Affairs, and this is my only focus. And today I was talking only about that with the Prime Minister and my colleagues.
Like our entire government, is very focused on the work that Canadians expect us to do. We understand that cost of living for a huge number of Canadians is a very significant issue, and they expect their government to be focused on affordability issues. That was my conversation with the Prime Minister. That'll obviously be a huge focus in my work as the Minister of Finance. We need to also be extremely focused on the challenges that the incoming American administration will pose with respect to the potential imposition of tariffs. I have been doing a lot of work on border security issues over the last number of weeks. I saw two leaders focused on these issues at Mar-a-Lago when we were there 2.5 weeks ago. So I intend to continue to do the work that I have, and I think I have a pretty busy set of issues in front of me, and I'm excited about it.
Lorsque vous êtes allé à Mar-a-Lago, est-ce que vous saviez
When
que
you
M.
went to
Trudeau
Mar-a-Lago,
voyait aux finances?
Did you know that she would be sent to finance by Prime Minister Trudeau? No, of course not. When we were in the plane and when we came back the next day, we talked about our conversation with President Trump and the work that I would have to do as the Minister of Public Safety. We talked about border security. I've been asked to take on the chairmanship of the U.S.-Canada Relationship Committee.
Minister, and were you the first pick, or did you have to step up because no one else wanted the job?
That wasn't the conversation I had with the Prime Minister. You'd have to talk to the Prime Minister about those issues. I spoke to him this afternoon. He asked me to assume this responsibility and to remain the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, to assume the chair's role of the Canada-U.S. Cabinet Committee, and to remain very focused on border security. So that was my conversation with him, and it's an enormous privilege. It's an enormous privilege to serve as the finance minister, and it's something that I will pour my heart and soul into for as long as I have the job.
And as finance minister, what will be your number one priority dealing with the new U.S. administration, cost of living, the $61 billion deficit?
I think the number one priority for the government has to remain the cost of living challenges that Canadian families are facing. Canadian families and Canadians across the country are feeling the pressure of the cost of living increases. They want the government to remain focused on those issues. That will be a huge focus for me as the Minister of Finance. They also expect the government to manage the public finances and taxpayers' money in an effective way. They want the expenditure of public money to be focused on what achieves results for them. So that's a job that I look forward to doing as Minister of Finance. And at this particular moment, the challenge that we're facing in terms of the potential threat of tariffs across the line on Canadian exports to the United States is a key economic concern for the government, and I look forward to working with Canada's premiers on this issue. I was very encouraged by conversations I had with a few premiers who were attending the Council of the Federation meeting today. Premier Ford, as chair of the Council of the Federation, will be a great ally for Canada, and for me, it's been a privilege to work with him in the past. But I look forward to using the very effective advocacy that premiers like Doug Ford, Premier Smith, attending conferences with American governors. These are all great assets for Canadians as we try and work together to convince the American administration that this isn't the right way to proceed. La priorité demeure pour moi.
The priority for me remains cost of living issues. Canadians and all of us are aware of the circumstances that we've seen in recent months in terms of financial pressures, and the federal government must remain focused on those issues. So that will certainly be my priority as Minister of Finance. But of course, Canadians also expect the government to spend taxpayers' money responsibly. And again, after assessing the benefits for Canadians and looking at public finances, I will be moving forward in my job.
Minister Laura Osmond, the logic, you're now chair of the U.S.-Canada Committee. You're the Intergovernmental Affairs Minister. You're in charge of the border. You're in charge of all of public safety. You are also in charge now of the entire finance department. How do you propose to give all of these crucial files your full attention at such a critical time for Canada, especially facing these trade threats?
So I guess I'll start early in the morning and work late at night, and probably won't take a lot of weekends off. It's an exciting time to have those responsibilities. I don't diminish for a minute the work that's before our government. The good news is I have colleagues and officials that will support me. I'm confident that Canadians will see a government focused on their priorities. And as I said, it's the cost of living challenges they're facing, and the relationship with the United States is obviously a huge focus. I remember Mr. Mulroney the late Right Honorable Brian Mulroney telling us that the management of that relationship was critical for the economic success of our country. He was an example of how to do that well. So I thought about him today and over the last number of weeks when I was developing, I hope, constructive relationships with incoming secretaries and officials in President Trump's administration, and do the work that will benefit Canadians.
Chrystia Freeland had some very pointed criticisms for the way this government is handling its finances, including calling, presumably the GST holiday a political gimmick, and suggesting the government's being irresponsible with Canadians' funds and not keeping its powder dry ahead of this fight with Donald Trump. How are you going to approach things differently, and what do you make of her criticisms?
Chrystia Freeland is somebody that I have worked with for well over a decade. She's somebody that I admire as a colleague, that I appreciate as a friend. She has accomplished a great deal for our government as Foreign Affairs Minister, as International Trade Minister, as Intergovernmental Affairs Minister, and most recently as Finance Minister. She has a proud record of delivering for Canadians programs as important as a national childcare program, the Canadian dental benefit. So I'm proud of her record as Minister of Finance. She's contributed to the public policy life of our country in an exemplary way. And I look forward now to assuming the responsibility of being Minister of Finance, talking to my colleagues as we prepare for what will be a 2025 budget. And I have a lot of confidence in the decisions our government, our cabinet has made, but will obviously do my job as Minister of Finance over the coming months.
Do you disagree with her?
En français, Chrystia Freeland est une amie.
Chrystia Freeland is a friend and has been for more than 10 years now. We sat together in the opposition when we were 30 members in the Liberal opposition, and we became friends with colleagues. And as I say, she is a friend. I have a great deal of respect for her. She has come to New Brunswick. I've been to her home in Toronto. So this is someone that I admire and respect, and she's done a lot of wonderful work for the government, not only as Minister of Finance. I'm thinking, for example, of the child care program, the dental care program, but when she was the Minister of Foreign Affairs or Minister of International Trade at the beginning of our government, she accomplished a great many things. My responsibility now is to prepare a budget for 2025, and I look forward to working with my colleagues within Cabinet and the caucus. We are in a minority parliament that passed budget estimates last week, but in preparing for a budget, I certainly intend to work with the friends that I have in other political parties as well. Thank you.